During the Cold War, the Soviet Union operated inside an absolute information vacuum. Without public scrutiny or international peer review, this isolation produced a bizarre research environment, one that funded groundbreaking physical science and fringe madness with equal intensity. We can map this phenomenon across 5 distinct nodes of extreme experimentation. I'm Legend. Think of me as your analytical guide. Today, we are decoding classified Soviet projects to separate actual physical data from geopolitical myth. This quadrant graph tracks how we will evaluate these experiments. On the x-axis, we have scientific validity, hard, reproducible physics. On the y-axis, strategic paranoia, projects driven by the existential panic of the arms race. We will track 5 specific operations. We start with pure geological engineering, move through applied electromagnetic espionage, and finally enter the realm of state-sponsored pseudoscience. The goal is to see exactly what happens to the scientific method when the threat of nuclear annihilation erases the boundary between objective reality and strategic delusion. In 1970, the Soviet Union launched a direct physical countermeasure to the United States Project Mohall, an offshore deep drilling initiative. This cross-section shows the target depth of the Kola Super Deep borehole. The goal was pure scientific discovery, uncovering billions of years of geological history. Ultimately, they reached a record-breaking depth of 7.6 miles. But a critical anomaly stopped the project. The expected temperature sharply spiked, verifying an extreme ambient heat of 356 degrees Fahrenheit. At those temperatures, the physical mechanics of drilling break down. The heat deformed the ancient rock into a plastic-like sludge, continually warping the drill bits and making vertical alignment impossible. You may have heard rumors of a well to hell, where scientists supposedly recorded the screams of the damned using a microphone lowered into the shaft. Those tapes are a documented hoax, spliced together from horror movie soundtracks. The physical reality of the site today is stark. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, the funding dried up, leaving this heavily bolted, rusted metal cap decaying in the Arctic snow. The Kola project sits high on the scientific validity axis. It was pure, extreme engineering that failed strictly because of the inescapable laws of thermodynamics. Moving up the paranoia axis toward applied military technology, we encounter an operation where physics was weaponized for covert surveillance. Starting in 1953, the U.S. Embassy in Moscow was subjected to invisible, continuous microwave bombardment. This schematic plots the physical attack. An undetectable microwave beam emanated from a neighboring apartment building, aimed precisely at the east side of the American compound. Declassified intelligence suggests these microwaves powered batteryless, hidden listening devices buried deep within the embassy walls. The human cost of this signal was severe. Diplomatic staff unknowingly worked under radiation levels 100 times higher than permitted by Soviet safety standards. Many later reported elevated white blood cell counts, and pregnant women were quietly evacuated. When President Gerald Ford confronted Soviet leadership, the response was denial. Leonid Brezhnev dismissed the radiation as industrial runoff and openly ridiculed the health concerns of the American diplomats. Back in Washington, officials like Henry Kissinger privately linked the devastating symptoms suffered by ambassadors to the radiation, yet official, definitive studies confirming the connection were either suppressed or deemed inconclusive. Decades later, U.S. diplomats in Havana reported strikingly similar experiences: sudden headaches, vertigo, and cognitive impairment with no obvious physical source. Both cases involved undetectable signals targeting diplomatic residences, leaving researchers to debate whether these were high-tech covert weapons or environmental anomalies. Pushing further up the paranoia axis, we enter the psychological theater of the Cold War. Driven by the fear that American intelligence was unlocking extrasensory perception through programs like Project Stargate, the Soviet state began funding the occult. In March 1970, researchers monitored a former tank crew member named Nina Kulagina. She concentrated on a frog's heart wired to electrodes in a clear solution. After 7 minutes of intense focus, the heart stopped. The official report stated she killed it using only her mind. Because mysticism was banned as anti-Marxist, the state utilized a linguistic trick. They reframed psychic phenomena with rigorous-sounding terminology, renaming telepathy to biological systems transmission to align with Marxist materialism and secure funding. Magicians and outside investigators quickly deconstructed her demonstrations. They pointed out that moving compass needles and separating egg yolks could be easily replicated using concealed magnets, invisible threads, and loosely controlled testing environments. The physical peak of this pseudoscience was the Kozyrev mirror. Constructed from spiral sheets of aluminum, these devices were theorized by astrophysicist Nikolai Kozyrev to manipulate what he called energy time by focusing invisible flows of information. Volunteers sealed inside these reflective cores reported a complete loss of time, sensations of floating, and spontaneous visions of prehistoric symbols manifesting inside the chamber. While the participants documented genuine psychological events, these were the predictable biological results of intense sensory deprivation, combined with the unique geomagnetic isolation of the Arctic test site. The mirrors induced extreme human isolation, not time travel. The height of the paranoia axis occurs in the streets during the late 1980s and early 1990s. The chaotic collapse of the Soviet Union created widespread economic desperation. Out of this vacuum emerged red mercury. It was marketed on the global black market as a blood-red substance capable of advancing stealth aircraft technology and manufacturing portable nuclear weapons. This chart tracks the resulting frenzy. Prices soared to hundreds of thousands of dollars per kilogram. But the chemical reality reveals a scam. Sellers took harmless dyed mercury oxide or industrial-grade paint, slapped radioactive symbols on the packaging, and sold them to terrified foreign buyers. Bureaucrats leveraged this myth to forge lucrative export quotas for the fake substance, embezzling millions in state funds that were originally intended for critical food imports during the nation's collapse. Red mercury never existed in a physics lab. It was a phantom weapon that caused real economic devastation, simply because international actors were terrified enough to pay for it. Plotting these case studies, a clear pattern emerges. Cola sits in hard physics. The Moscow signal weaponizes it. But in the high paranoia, low validity quadrant, science disappears entirely. Kulagina, Kozyrev mirrors, and the red mercury scam were funded by immense geopolitical anxiety. The core vulnerability of the Soviet experimental era was the absolute information vacuum itself. Without the corrective mechanism of open scientific peer review, state leadership had no reliable way to distinguish between an engineering breakthrough and an elaborate delusion. They funded both. I'm Legend. By plotting these historical extremes, we can begin to see exactly where objective data ends and where strategic panic takes over. To continue deconstructing the complex systems, classified projects, and myths that shape our history, hit subscribe to Insight Engine. We'll see you in the next analysis.